Star Wars Young Jedi Knights Shadow Academy Chapter 17. Tenel Ka and Luke rode astride a young Rancor that had not been marked to show ownership in any particular clan. The night air was warm and still heavy with the moisture from the unnatural storm Vanda Ra and her student Villas had called up. Dathomir's two moons floated out, and in of wispy clouds, shedding a diffuse pearly light into their path. Tenel Ka sat in front of Luke on the wuffa-hide saddle, guiding the Rancor steadily in the direction of the Great Canyon. She was a good rider, and she knew it. She had to admit it felt good to demonstrate to Master Skywalker that she was an expert at something. The light breeze rustled the leaves of the low bushes around them, so that when Luke leaned forward to whisper in her ear, Tenel Ka hardly heard him at first. "I had to kill a Rancor once," he said. "It was a shame. They're such fine creatures." "Even so," Tenel Ka answered, "they are dangerous to those who are not their friends." Luke was silent for a moment. "I fought many battles," he said at last, "and yes, I have had to kill. But I have learned from the light side of the Force it is better to do everything in my power first to turn a situation." "But surely," Tenel Ka interrupted, "a Night Sister, or anyone else seduced by the dark side, would not hesitate to kill you." "Exactly." Luke's soft exclamation took her by surprise. "Now you begin to understand," he said. "Those who use the light side do not believe the same things as those who use the dark side. But we can only demonstrate our differences by acting on our beliefs. Otherwise, we are not so different after all." "Aha," Tenel Ka said. "Just as I struggle to show that I am different from my grandmother on Hapes." Her voice trailed off. "Yes, I see now." In spite of the darkness, their sure-footed Rancor picked its way steadily down the steep path that led to the floor of the deep canyon. During their descent, they spotted a cluster of more than a dozen campfires and knew they had found the Night Sisters' encampment. By the time they reached the canyon floor, both Luke and Tenel Ka were sore and aching and weary. The air was cool, with a light mist hovering close to the ground, and they were both glad of the warm cloaks that Egwene had pressed on them during their rushed preparations for departure. She had given them a change of clothes appropriate to their cover story, along with a bag of provisions. Then she had hugged Tenel Ka fiercely. "Daughter of my daughter's daughter," she said, "go in safety. The thoughts of the Singing Mountain clan are with you." And to Luke she turned and said, "May the Force be with you." Egwene had released Tenel Ka and spoke again to her. "I am proud of what you do for your friends. You are a true warrior woman of our clan. Always remember our most sacred rule from the Book of Laws. Never concede to evil." As they drew closer to the evil, Tenel Ka shivered and drew her cloak more tightly around her. She wondered if they would find Lobaka, Jason, Jaina at the camp of the Night Sisters, if they would be only an intermediate step in their search. Could the Night Sisters be training them in the dark ways of the Force? Tenel Ka let her eyes drift shut, then cast about with her mind, but she sensed no trace of her three friends. As if understanding the direction of her thoughts, Luke leaned forward again. "If we don't find them here, the Force will guide us. We are close, I feel it." An undulating cry rang out from the canyon rocks above them. Tenel Ka startled in surprise. "A scout sounding the alarm," she said, irritated with herself for having been caught off guard. "Good," Luke replied. "Then they'll know we're here." Tenel Ka hesitated at first, uncertain of whether it was safe to continue, and then urged the young Rancor forward. She looked up at the sky, which had lightened from the black of the pre-dawn grayness, reminding her again of how much time had passed since her friends had been captured. Rounding the next bend in the trail, the Rancor came to an abrupt stop. Tenel Ka looked at the path ahead and saw that their way was blocked by three full-grown Rancors, each bearing a rider dressed as much as Vanda Ra and Villas had been earlier that evening. The presence of Luke's hand at her waist was a warning, but she already knew. Even in the dimness, she could see that each of the riders held an Imperial blaster aimed directly at them. Tenel Ka had been raised to take command, and though she rarely exercised the power, it did come naturally. She sat straighter in the saddle, held one arm high. "Sisters and brothers of the great Canyon clan," she said, "we have heard your message from far away as the Misty Falls clan, and have traveled here to join you. We are not without skill in the Force, and we wish to learn your ways, to use all the force and become strong. Leaving the Rancors in the well-provisioned stockade, Tenelka and Luke followed the guards toward the center of the camp. She was surprised to see two Imperial ATSD scout walkers clanking like mechanical birds around the perimeter on guard duty near the penned Rancors. Passing between boldly colored tents made of water-repellent lizard hides, Tenelka noted roughly 10 women and at least as many men going about their early morning business in eerie silence, as if the worn ground mists swirling up to their knees muffled all sound. She saw no children at all in the encampment, heard no baby cries, no sounds of young ones playing. In fact, she saw very few in the great Canyon clan who were as young as she was. Though she had known what to expect, it amazed Tenelka that men came and went here as freely as the women, apparently slaves to no one. She wondered if it was possible that that these men and women were now thought of each other as equals. In the center of the camp, they came at last to an enormous patchwork pavilion that floated on the mist, like a barbaric island made of furs and lizard hides sewn together. It was held up at the center and the corners by spears, 3 meters long and as thick around as Tenelka's wrists. One of the Night Sisters raised the tent flap and motioned them inside. They entered, but the sister did not follow. The flap dropped shut behind them, sealing out the wraith-like mists in the morning light. Waiting for her eyes to adjust, Tenelka tried to sense her friend, but she found no trace. But the light touch of Master Skywalker's hand on her arm reassured her. At the center of the tent, a tiny pinpoint of light suddenly flared into bright flame. And Tenelka saw it came from an oil lamp fashioned out of an inverted skull of a mountain lizard. Beside the lamp, on a wide platform covered with furs and cushions made from the hides of a variety of wild beasts, an imposing woman reclined on a massive chair made from a stuffed Rancor head. The woman beckoned them forward into the flickering circle of light. Without so much as a greeting, Vanda Ra asked, "What is your business here?" Tenelka, who had recognized the dark-haired woman, instantly said, "I have come to join the Night Sisters, and I have brought my slave with me." "What have you to offer us?" Vanda Ra looked mildly interested, but not impressed. "Many come wishing to join us, but they are weak. Women seek us out because their powers are small or they have no status in their clans. Men come here because they have never had power, and our teachings offer them freedom. But they usually have less to offer. What do you have?" Vanda Ra's hand reached out and pointed to the lizard's skull filled with the burning oil. "Can you do this?" The lamp floated straight toward the peak of the tent, casting an ever-widening but dimmer circle of light, and then settled slowly back down into the platform beside Vanda Ra. Tenelka nodded. "I have had some training." Deciding against any theatrical gestures or words, she half closed her eyes in concentration and grasped the lamp with her mind. She had never enjoyed showing off her skill with the Force, using it only for absolute necessary, but this performance was not only for herself. She would never probably see Jason and Jaina and Lobaka again if she could not show these Night Sisters her true potential. She drew in a deep breath, let it out again. Without a sound, the lamp glided off the platform and high into the air over their heads. Tenelka thought about the flame, feeding it with her mind and making it brighter and brighter until its warm radiance reached even the darkest corners of the pavilion. Then she sent the lamp sailing around the outer edges of the tent. It made a complete circle so quickly that she heard Vanda Ra gasp with amazement. Though her half-closed eyes, Vanda Ra watched the dark-haired woman sit up. Tenelka watched the dark-haired woman sit up, one hand outstretched, palm up as if to question. Tenelka brought the lamp in closer for another circle, and then another, smaller and closer to the central tent post, until at last it spun around the center pole in a dizzy downward spiral, still glowing brightly, all in a matter of few seconds. Last, Tenelka brought the spinning lamp lightly to rest in Vanda Ra's outstretched hand. The Night Sister gave a gleeful chuckle. "You are welcome here, sister," she said. "What is your name?" Tenelka threw her head back. My name, our names, are no longer have any meaning for us. We discarded them when you left our clan. Come here, Fonda ordered. When Tenelka did as she was told, the Night Sister stood and took the young girl's chin in her fingers and looked deep into her eyes. Yes, she said with a satisfied nod. You have much anger in you. Are you willing to go elsewhere to learn? To a place of instruction among the stars? Tenelka's heart leaped. Perhaps this was where Jason and Jaina and Lobak had been taken. Wherever your finest teachers are, that is where I wish to go, she replied. Then you must leave your slave behind. We have little use for him, Vandara said. No. Vandara sighed. What if I were to tell you that men rarely have any talent, and that we have never trained one this old? He would only distract you from what you must learn. There's little hope of teaching him. If you knew all this, then what would you say? I would say, Tenelka replied, leveling her best cool gray stare at Vandara, that you are a fool. Vandara's eyes went wide with surprise, but Tenelka did not stop. This man has watched and learned the ways of the Force since before I was born. Not many who still live has seen his power, but I have seen it. Vandara roughly turned her skeptical gaze toward Luke. If you can lift this, she said, pointing to her lizard skull lamp, and bring as much light to this tent as she did. She nodded toward Tenelka. Then you shall accompany her. The Night Sister looked at Luke and then back down at the lamp. When it did not move, a small contemptuous smile flickered at the corners of her mouth. Then something large and dark floated between them and blocked her view. The flame from the oil lamp brightened, and the massive Rancor head grinned at her, its lifeless eyes glowing with reflected light. Then the head lifted and glided around the perimeter of the tent like a shuttlecraft. Tenelka could see Master Skywalker standing with arms crossed over his chest, one knee bent in an apparently relaxed posture, his head cocked to one side, smiling at Vandara as he sent the Rancor head whizzing about the pavilion. Since you asked, he said, I will give you light. Suddenly, in a blur of motion, the stuffed Rancor head shot upward with the speed of a blaster fire. It disappeared through the ceiling of the tent, leaving a gaping hole in its wake, through which the bright morning sunlight streamed. Vandara looked more than a little nervous as she stepped forward and took Luke's chin in her hands. For more than a minute she gazed transfixed into his eyes. Yes, she hissed at last. You understand the dark side. She backed away from him as if in awe, stared up at the dent in the ceiling of her pavilion, then looked back at Luke and Tenelka. We expect an Imperial supply shuttle at dawn tomorrow, she said. When it leaves this planet, the two of you must be on it.